You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold. And today we have some wonderful special guests with us today doing awesome things in this world. We have Ryan and Tami Canaday. Ryan's a lead pastor at St. Luke's United Methodist Church in Highlands Ranch there in Colorado. And Tami is a mompreneur. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes. Awesome. We're super glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit, about your story and about yourselves and about what you guys are doing. So I'm going to hand it over to y'all. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We're honored to be here and excited to be podcasting with you all. So thanks for having us. I'll start and Tami can jump in wherever she sees fit to correct me. So we're on to tell you all a little bit about our journey of starting, and this is scary to say these words because I said I would never do this, and that is starting a church. In fact, there's been a few things I said I would never do in life, and I'm learning to never say never because all of those things we said we would never do, they keep happening.
Oh, they do.
So we used to live in Denver, in the Denver proper. And one place we said we would never live is Highlands Ranch, Colorado. We would never live in Highlands Ranch. Then we get appointed there. We said we would never have a minivan. And then that third kid came along and we had a minivan. We just sold that to get a scooter. So I ride around on a Honda Ruckus scooter. So we downgraded, or depending on how you look at it, maybe we upgraded. We said we would never start a church because I heard the stories. I know what it takes to do a church. And truth is, I've been happy and comfortable for the last 5 years. So no, we have no business starting a church. Why would you do that? And here we are embarking on the journey of starting a church. And so I think we'll start there because that's the biggest thing happening in our lives right now. Starting this church is called Free. And it is a church for addicts. Addicts of all kinds is what we're saying. And I'll get a little bit more into my story of why that's important. But addicts, loved ones of addicts, so people who aren't addicts, but they love people who are addicts. And then that other umbrella of spiritual refugees, people who have felt kicked out of the church. They feel like they don't belong. They feel like they're not welcome there. They don't even know what to do when they walk into the walls of a church. And that is so often, in my experience, so often connected and tied to issues of addiction.
It's those people that have had painful and negative experiences. And I have a few thoughts on that tier, if you will, when we get there. So, and part of my story that kind of intertwines into that third tier and second tier.
So here's the deal. Maybe I'll start with our story and why that's important, and then jumping into what we're doing. And Zach and Matt, if you need to pause along the way and do some clarifying questions, jump on in.
We'll toss you some softballs every now and then.
Yeah, make it hard on us. There you go. So I was ordained in 2014, started campus ministry, back in seminary. So back in 2007, I did the Wesley Foundation campus ministry at DU. In fact, it was pretty non-existent. Mm-hmm. So when I came in, it was kind of like building a church. In fact, campus ministry is like building a church every year. It's some hard work, but I loved it.
It is, yeah.
But, I grew up in a household. My brother was an addict, an alcoholic, drug addict. He was 3 years older than me, and he got sober for about 2 years. And he was 22 years old at the time, sober for 2 years, and he relapsed. And in that relapse, he was killed. He got behind the wheel of a car drunk, and that didn't turn out well for him. Luckily, he was the only one hurt and killed. But, boy, that sounds weird to say, luckily. Right. No one else was killed is what I was trying to say in that. Right. So, and during my high school years in college, like high school, I was a leader in the youth group. I was looked at as the good kid. The addict was never supposed to be me. I mean, that stuff was my brother. So when I got into college, after he died, I went to Bible school. I left. I left on a whim. When I found out he was killed, I just told the dean, I'm out of here. And I left in the middle of class, packed up my dorm room, went home. And what happened soon after that was I started finding some comfort in the drink. And it brought to me a bunch of shame. It brought to me all this guilt because, like I said, that was never supposed to be me. That was him. Got a DUI in college, and I was studying biblical studies, and so I had that shame. Then Tami and we started dating in college, and we got married, and I went to seminary. And when I hit seminary, that's where my drinking career took off, and it was always this great secret that I didn't want anyone to know. The ones closest to me experienced my addiction, right? They got the ugly side of my addiction, and what came with that addiction was me working really hard to keep this a secret. No one could find out about it. And the truth is, I was new to it. I didn't know what to do with this. I thought, come on, God, how come I can't beat this? I'm studying to be a pastor. In seminary, I started, doing campus ministry. Why can't I beat this addiction? I mean, why is it every night when I drive home, that liquor store just starts calling my name, and I go in there and I buy. It started with half pints, then pints, and then, in my drinking career, I tried to give up booze, and then I would give up wine and just do beer. Then I would give up brown liquor and just do white liquor, and that's where it ended for me, is sitting on a couch with a fifth of vodka. That's how I like to drink. I like to drink alone. I like to isolate. I didn't like to deal with my pain. I didn't like to deal with the wounds. I like to drink over it. So. You have anything to add to that before I jump into getting sober?
I mean, I've heard the story so many times, guys, but I still have flashbacks into those moments and those times. And even I was working, and I would have to get up 4:30 some morning. So I'm going to bed, and he's staying up on the couch. And so I'd go to the liquor bottle that he was currently working on, and I'd put a permanent marker line of where it was when I went to bed, because I knew I'm going to go, be responsible, get up, do my job while he stays up, he drinks. And in the morning, I'd make a comment. He's like, I didn't drink that much. And I'd take the bottle and go and show him, well, I actually made a mark where you were when I went to bed. And then there's quite a dent that you made in that liquor bottle. So it was a ongoing cycle for quite some time. And truly, I was so naive to even the process of all of it. It's something new to me, being around and learning how to truly love an alcoholic. But yeah, it was never an option, I guess, for me, because I feel like we both have shown each other so much grace on our journey at different times in our lives. And it wasn't an option for me to leave him, but there was a lot of anger and resentment that was starting to bubble up inside.
We had I got sober when our oldest daughter, she's now going to turn 8 next week. She was 2 years old. And so it was this real fear of what's Ryan going to be like as a dad to me, that I couldn't be a dad because of drinking. And, I tried to get sober once and tried to do it on my own, and I'm going to give this stuff up. And I actually got a sponsor through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And about a couple months in, I told him, hey, man, I think I'm good. I think I got this. I was weighing 251 pounds. I was fat. Started dropping some pounds. And I said, man, I got this. I'm good. And it lasted for about 5 months before I was right back to where I started, which leads me to January 7th, 2013.
Thank God for that day.
Yeah, it was one of the hardest days of my life, and also one of the best days of my life. It was new life. It was resurrection for me. But I'd passed out on the couch. And you know what was so interesting about this day? It was Sunday night. My last drink was a Sunday night, and on that Sunday night, it was just like any other Sunday night. Nothing bad happened. Nothing great happened. I led worship, preached. I prayed with people, and started to drink that night, and I didn't stop. I passed out on the couch like I had so many other nights, and Tami came down the stairs holding an empty liquor bottle, and she said, what are we going to do? And she had tears in her eyes, and she was holding this bottle that I thought I had hidden well enough, but apparently did not hide well enough. And she said, what are we going to do? And Selah, our daughter, couldn't wake you up off the couch again last night. And she was saying, Poppy, Poppy. And she was like, hit me on the head and I couldn't wake up. And so I said, well, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to call our marriage counselor. We did marriage counseling a few years before. I'm going to call her and I'm going to work through this thing. And I call her. I said, Sue, I've got this problem with alcohol and I can't stop drinking. And I need to set up an appointment with you. And she said, Ryan, I would love to see you, but first you need to be involved in some sort of support group. And I said, what do you mean? And she says something like AA. And so I hung up the phone and I was really pissed off. And I told Tami, I said, Sue won't even see me. And Tami says, come on. And I said, seriously, she won't see me. She said, what'd she say? And I said, well, she said I had to do something like AA before she'd see me. And Tami said, so you're going to go, right? And so that day I went to an AA meeting and I got a sponsor. And I started working these steps and I started getting real and honest with myself. And I started connecting to other people who had the same problem as me. And what happened was when I sat in those rooms of a 12-step meeting, I would hear the stories from people and think, oh my goodness, you are just like me. And I thought I was all alone in this. I thought no one else is like me, but what I see is all these other people are like me and we do it together. We journey together. We get honest together. And, that was 5.5 years ago. And I experienced and keep experiencing this God of grace and this God of incredible mercy and this God who, when I surrender, like this God is open arms and always welcoming me back home. And relationships have gotten better. This God has removed the obsession of alcohol from me, which I thought was never possible. I just thought this can never go away. And this God full of love and grace and mercy removed the obsession. I don't know how it happened. It's one of the great mysteries, but it was God. It wasn't me.
And I have to say thank goodness too for that. Because for me, a major detail of all of that was it was January, mm-hmm. and it was a month before our second baby girl was born. And so we had a pretty candid conversation, and I let Ryan know if you are not sober at that moment when I go into labor, there will be some consequences. I don't know what that's going to look like, but if I have to reach out and call somebody else to take me to the hospital to deliver our baby girl, there will be some conversations that will be had. And so, when he says, thank God for January 7th, I too am just right on board and say, thank God so much for that, that he was sober to drive me to have Shiloh, that he was sober to drive me to have Breck, and he will be sober to drive me to have baby number 4, that, by the way, is
you just went away.
Yeah, we're not really celebrating yet. It was kind of a surprise. So thanks, Zach, for your celebration down there.
I got you.
Kind of be excited, but we're...
Yeah, see, I got this tattoo that says 3 blessings.
Right.
We thought we were done at 3.
Right.
Guys.
Well, I've got the same type of thing. I took my kids, I've got 3. I took their stuffed animals they had, like when they were little bitty, and had my tattoo artist put them together. And so I have those and their names are on the tag, that kind of thing. My wife's like, what if we have a 4th? I'm like, we're not doing that.
We had that conversation. That we had checked all the boxes to make it not happen. And he talks about surrender. And I'm like, wow, this is a form of surrender, especially for me at this point right now.
For sure.
I'm learning a new way to define surrender in my life.
Right. Well, bless you. That's, it's exciting and scary all at the same time.
Yeah, remember how I said never say never? We were never going to have 4 kids, right?
Right.
How's that working for you?
It's, we're okay right now. I used to tell, I did campus ministry for a few years, and I used to tell my my college students, I said, never pray for patience, because that's when God gives you children, right? And we had our 3rd kid when I was at that Wesley Foundation, and we were doing Joys and Concerns or something. I said, which one of you prayed for me to have more patience? It's your fault.
So that all leads to us starting a church. I know that was a long story for getting there.
That was great.
What happened along the way in these last 5.5 years in this life of sobriety is, and I keep running into people like me, and I keep running into people who crave a spiritual connection, people who crave a spiritual community, like people who crave a church but don't want a church. You know what I mean? People who have no patience and tolerance for doing surface stuff, for keeping things up here when it comes to the God business. They want to go deep, and they want to go fast and deep. And because it truly is, for people like me, for addicts, it's a life and death situation. It's not, when we do our worship thing, when we do the church thing, it's not just coming to gather and sing pretty songs. It's actually staying spiritually fit is a life and death matter for us. So we wanted to create space for recovery. And we're very clear, we are not a recovery group. There are great 12-step programs, and I want to promote those. The goal is that 12-step programs would be huge because of this thing. I mean, that would be a dream of mine, at least. But we want to create space to promote recovery, spiritual connection, and healing. We want to create the space for people to experience what it's like to be free. Because in my experience, in my observation, people aren't free. I mean, we walk around with these huge burdens. We walk around with these chains, and we walk around trying to impress God and trying to get God on our side. And it's like God the whole time is saying, I'm already on your side. Like, all I have is yours. Do you want it? I mean, you can have this. You can have all of this, but you got to come and take it because you're free. So it was actually on my birthday this year. So April 3rd. And I went to bed that night and I said, you know what? I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to say it out loud and put it out to the universe, and I'm going to leave it.
He always thinks like going to bed. But guys, let me just correct him again. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. Okay. We have these profound like visions in the middle of the night when we're half asleep. But it always happens that way for him.
Right. That's how this podcast started. Is a late night Xbox binge and saying, "Hey, let's do this." And the next thing I know, I'm clicking and buying a website, and
see.
Yeah. So we were laying in bed, and I just said, "Hey, I'm not getting any younger. We're not getting any younger. I get it. We're not getting old, but we're not getting younger." And this thing, we had talked about this thing in the past. What would it be like to create this? No, we're too busy. We're happy. We're good. We're comfortable. We don't need to create a new thing. But I just said it that night. And it was like, what would it be like for us to create it? And we were not calling it a church at the time. We tried to call it a spiritual community, a faith community, a thing. You know, and a thing doesn't get you very far. But through meetings with other people, they're like, yeah, this sounds like a church. This sounds like a gathering of people, and you believe in like the power of Jesus and the power of surrender, and you're going to gather to get, yeah, that sounds like a church. And so we just had to get comfortable with, yeah, okay, we're starting a church. That's it. We're starting a church. I
think we had to start exploring then, like Ryan touched on, who is this going to hit? Because at first Ryan said, we should say it's church. This church is not for everyone. He's like, ooh, that's not very welcoming. But the point, you do have like a niche and who you're trying to reach. And so like Ryan mentioned, the 3 tiers, if you think of it like a Wi-Fi signal, the closest one to the Wi-Fi signal are the addicts. And that would be very much Ryan's story. And then the second tier would be the loved ones of addicts, which would be very much my story. And then the third tier are those spiritual refugees. And man, we that third tier, Ryan and I were like, what are we going to call it? We messed around with that third tier for a couple of months, like changing the language, changing what we wanted to identify it as. What specifically are these people? And the more we played with it, the more it made sense, especially when it came to my story, that it had to be the spiritual refugee. And so to go into my story this year just a little bit more, I was in the corporate world for almost 15 years. And a couple of years ago decided to quit because our family was growing, and there's other things that we wanted to do. We find that we work pretty well together. So Ryan and I were leading groups. One very specific one that we kept repeating was called Why. And so after we did this Why group, Ryan and I decided to write a book together called Whiteboarding Your Why, and have done retreats with it. We just invested a lot of time and energy into doing this book. And so that was a huge piece of, I guess, probably half of a year for us, especially for me as I was editing and putting this thing together. And then I joined a religious organization. And so that was for a while, but really for 4 months that I was on board with them. And it came to early this year in February, and I won't go into all the details because it wouldn't be appropriate, but they sat me down and were curious what my stance was on gay marriage and homosexuality. And so I had to be honest and share, even though I felt like they kind of understood, and Ryan had done sermons on this, and I felt like they knew. And it was at that point they said, well, it's kind of like your opportunity to say you have a different opinion than your husband. And I said, I don't think that gay rights, gay marriage, any of that is a sin. And they said, we're going to immediately let you go. And so at that point, I think it was when I realized I know the importance of community, but I truly acknowledged and so respected and appreciated our congregation, our church, because if it wasn't for that, I mean, it was immediate. I got kicked off of everything, all my rights and privileges, and my laptop that I had, it was gone. People sent nasty notes, mean things, and that community was just, I mean, within 24 hours, history to me. And truly, if I'm honest, I did feel like a spiritual refugee. I felt left out. I felt kicked out. I felt kicked in the stomach. And it was hard. These were people that I loved dearly, and I thought loved me back. And it sure didn't feel that way. When we say we love all people, guys, it didn't feel that way just by sharing an opinion. And the outpouring of love and grace that our congregation at St. Luke's showed me, I don't know how I could have survived that without that community and that connection that they provided to me after that experience. And so that was so profound that Ryan and I kept mulling over the third tier. I'm like, that has to be the third tier, because there's so many other people that are feeling this way. And I am not myself homosexual, of course. Me and Ryan have been married for over 13 years. But man, if these people are feeling what I felt times whatever number, whatever amount that they're feeling that, I want them to come and hang out with us. Like, hey, guys, I know how you feel, just on the tiniest scale.
Right.
And know that truly you are loved, and we do love you, and you are welcome. So that's a big part of my ministry too.
And the message we would give to spiritual refugees and the addict that's still struggling, I mean, is still suffering, alcoholic or drug addict or any addiction, is that God loves you no matter what, and God is always inviting you to come back home. God is always inviting you to a better, fuller kind of life. Like, that's a message. Sometimes we in the church, we get that. That's a message that never gets old. It's a message that never runs dry. It's a message that we need to be not just proclaiming with our words, but actually living out to say, you're actually welcome here. And it doesn't mean you're welcome and we want to try to get you to see life our way and get you to see God our way, but you're welcome here because we actually believe that God loves you. Like, that's a powerful thing. I've got to be reminded of that.
Right. I love you've now told your story. You were just talking about spiritual refugee, and I love that. Hanging out in some of the places that I hang out, I see a lot of that. I've got a little town, well, my smallest church, or one of my small churches, I pastor 3, and it's in a town of like 150 people. And it's the church, the bar, and the post office, and the co-op, right? Those are the only things that are in town. And hang out at the bar quite a bit. And people who are members of I've met as many members of my church in the bar than I have in church. And I've met so many people who, man, you know, the people who came before you, the pastors who came before you didn't do you any favors. You know, we haven't been back since we graduated high school. We haven't been back because of this. And it's that spiritual refugee is there. I mean, so many people feel that way, and to name that is huge. And to name it in such a way that's like, oh, here we are. Okay. You know, this is who we are encountering. And that's a real thing. And to be able to hit that head first and name it, like you said, it's so important to say, just to give that message of God loves you, and I truly believe that, and I love you, and I believe that. Come be here, It's huge.
Yeah. And I gotta tell you, like, for me and my background and where I come from, that for me was very much breaking my silence. Like, it took everything in me to do that. I can't tell you, like, I was sweating, I was nervous. And then Rye's like, man, you got to do a post on this. And I was like, oh my word, I'm a peacemaker, guys. I'm an Enneagram type 9. Like, I don't need to stir the waters anymore. Like, I stirred the waters enough today. I feel awful. And Ryan's like, you have to post this. You have to share what happened, why you did it. We're very much the why. People asking those questions. And I mean, I literally was just like shaking so bad when I hit post and I shared what happened with that organization and why. But the freedom that came with breaking my silence, and I think the freedom that came for Ryan and breaking his silence, we keep seeing this theme, and that's kind of our underlying theme that goes along with free. So that's, I think, when we were like, what are we doing here? What is our mission? It's all about breaking the silence. Of addiction, of whatever that might be. For me, it was in recovering myself of who I truly am inside and sharing my opinion of where I stand on that issue, because there's nothing that would have allowed me to share that before that moment. And I had to break my silence to be true to who my authentic self is.
Yeah, another thing we noticed was just in the last less than 12 months, about the last 10 months, we've had connected to St. Luke's 5 deaths, all under the age of 40, 5 deaths of addiction due to drug and alcohol abuse, drug and alcohol addiction. And so that was one of the things that said, man, we kept taking these risks in our lives. And that's something in the Canaday household, we take that very seriously. We are going to take risks, and we are going to have each other's backs. That's like a covenant we have. We're going to keep taking risks. We're not going to just stop and do what's comfortable. And when we do it, we're going to have each other's back in it. Like, we've had to make that agreement with each other. But that was kind of another thing that happened was just those deaths that kept coming up. And it's like, yeah, people are actually dying over this stuff. Like, and the church is, in my mind, to be in the places of death, that's where we experience life. That's where we actually experience resurrection. And so what we did was we put together this leadership team of 12 people. I flew out to a place called Montana and went to a church planting conference, and I was in conversation. Actually, I had a conversation with the bishop and our DS and the church higher ups, and they've been very supportive of this. So we put together a leadership team while we were the 3 days before annual conference this year. So June, whatever that was, first week in June. One of the guys on our leadership team, I got a call, and he died that night with a needle in his arm, died of a heroin overdose. And we very specifically picked people on our leadership team, some church people, some new in recovery, some old in recovery. But that's the reality we deal with is, man, when you disconnect, when you isolate, death is a real thing. And we come face to face with that. So it was almost like this message became really clear, like, yeah, keep going, because this is important work. And so what we did was we flew out to Houston. We talked to a couple churches there, some ministries doing some great recovery ministry. And we just said, let's start a 4-week pilot group. So we started that 4 weeks ago. We are just 4 weeks into this thing. Here it is, middle of July, we're 4 weeks in. And we thought we might have 10 people in our backyard. We didn't do space for this. We didn't have it in the church. We had it in our backyard. We thought maybe we'll get 10 people. We'll see what happens. The first week we had, I think, 25. The second week we had 30. Third week, 35. Last week we had 40. And that was just through promoting on social media. We haven't done any connection with area churches, rehab centers, 12-step groups, because the truth is our backyard is a bit limited. So we were going to take a break after the 4 weeks, and everyone, like those 40 people, said, no, we can't do that. We've got to keep going. There's momentum and energy here, and it's bringing in this first group of people. We have an atheist on our leadership team which people said, what the heck are you guys thinking? An atheist on a church leadership team? And maybe he's kind of, maybe wouldn't describe himself as a full atheist now. He just has no church experience. But last week he said, man, what's happening here gave me goosebumps. And we read scripture. We pray together. In our leadership team, we pray together. So I'm just reminded of what happens when we truly step out into what God is calling us to do. It's not easy. It's really scary. This thing has been scary for us because it's like, dang, we have this good thing over it. St. Luke's is a great church and a great congregation. It's not that we're unhappy at all. It's just that I've got this calling and we've got this calling. And part of this following Jesus stuff says, yes, sometimes you step off the familiar path and you step into the unknown. And that can be really scary.
And I think when we decided to do the 4-week pilot, it really was just to get a feel for what we were doing and get some feedback from the community and from our leadership team. And we had a conversation, I guess, a week or two ago, and somebody made a really profound statement. They're like, we have to keep going. The momentum's there. And the people that are coming to Free have already, in a way, felt a sense of abandonment. And we can't do that to them. We cannot be another group, church, whatever we are, that is going to be abandoning these people. And for me, that just like hit me to my core. Because in my way, and like I shared in just a tiny bit of my story, I've been there. I get that. So let's keep going. So we are continuing to move forward. Our leadership team is stepping up and helping us create this space.
It's huge.
But yeah, we're excited. We're excited for the journey, and God knows what's ahead of us and outside of these 4 weeks and what we had planned. But yeah, I think you follow where the energy is. And we talk about that even in our book, where the energy is, where is the flow? You have to follow it because that's where God is working.
And so what we know right now is, and I'll end with this because y'all might have questions, and we've probably been babbling quite some time now, but we're figuring out logistics along the way with our St. Luke's congregation and what this looks like, because we were thinking this was just a side thing for a while, but it's like it's not a side thing anymore. It's a real thing. And so what that looks like for my position, what that looks like for getting space, we're looking at right now as we speak. I have no clue where we'll be when this thing airs. I don't know when this will air, but we're in different meetings to look at. There's a grease monkey up the street, and it's got the double bay garages, and it would be like the perfect setting for like raw and organic things to happen. So we're looking at leasing some of that space, and we're trying to stay. I'm learning in this process to stay open. Sobriety has taught me that if I live with these clenched fists and trying to hang on everything and control everything, it doesn't go well. I start losing my peace. I start losing serenity. So what God says is, hey, live open and see what happens. So that's where we are right now, going into our 5th week. I mean, this thing is so brand new. Y'all are getting us right at like the beginning of it. So it'll be cool to see in a year from now where it is. I mean, there's a chance the whole thing could fail, right? I mean, there's always that thing when you do something new, it could fail.
Right. Well, and that's the thing you talk about risk. If a risk going into something isn't failure, we didn't dream big enough, right? We're not maybe we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. We've got to have that risk there, and not be afraid of it. And I've been watching you guys do this over the last 4 weeks on Facebook. I've been super creepy about it, and but it's because you're doing something that people need. And clearly, if you're thinking, hey, we're going to try this for 4 weeks, and holy crap, we have 40 people showing up. We live in a world that whether it's recovery or therapy or just getting help in general is not overly promoted, right? We do it in some spaces and things like that, but it's still kind of a shameful thing or something we kind of hold on to and keep secret. And for you guys to be open about that and say, hey, here we are, come please. We all need help. We all need this space that we can go and be open and free and to provide that space. Obviously, it's something that your community, if not it's every community, but you found that place in your community that says, oh God, we need this. All of us need this.
Yeah. And can I just say, we're in the suburbs. people, when they think of addiction issues, they think, well, inner city. Of course it's a problem in the inner city. It's a problem everywhere, but here we are in the suburbs, Douglas County, one of the wealthiest counties in the U.S. And what happens here is we have this suburban sickness where I can pull in my garage, and before I even get in the house, I can close my garage, and I never have to connect. I never have to do community. And so I can wear this mask and hide my addiction and isolate. And so that's why for us, it's really important to break the silence, to start talking about these issues, because it is now a national epidemic. Opioids, heroin, a national epidemic as of last year. Alcoholism in the suburbs skyrocketed. I mean, addiction issues in the suburbs are a huge problem right now. And that's why people say, they always ask us, well, don't you want to be downtown Denver? No. We want to be right here in the suburbs because the problem is here too, and it manifests itself in different ways.
So, you guys are still in your infancy, and so your church has kind of probably been walking alongside with you in this, right? In a sense of just, hey, we're here for you. Have you had any kind of negative response on that? I don't want to this is such great positive energy, but I know that there's got to be, someone's probably said something to you all. Have you in this time, have you experienced any negative about that?
No, none at all. None at all. Yeah, that's a great question. And so let me preface it with this. Our congregation is great, supportive. And yeah, there's been some hard questions along the way. And part of it is totally my fault because I get this vision and I go full speed. And I forget that good leadership is actually slowing down and bringing the people with you. So if this podcast were to take place in another couple of weeks, I might have more insight. I'm in the midst of being told, Ryan, you've got to slow down. It's like slow things down a little bit and bring people with you. No one has said anything, to my knowledge. No one's got any negative attitudes towards the ministry itself because, like I said, we've had 5 years of young people in addiction. It's a huge problem. Everyone realizes that. So it truly is. I do believe they see the need for it, but it's how we go about starting new ministries and new churches. I've got to be reminded all the time to walk. Not slow down completely, but slow down enough to get the message out, let people know what we're doing, not try to do it on my own. I mean, these are all, as a recovering alcoholic, these are old tendencies. I'm just going to go because I got the answers and I know how to do it, and screw you if you don't. No. That's BS. Bring people with you because they want to be involved. They want to be a part of this thing.
They want to contribute.
Yeah, they want to contribute. So it's all good stuff, but it's stuff I have to be reminded of.
It is. I'm a very much a ready, fire, aim type of person. Okay, we need to do this. We need to feed kids in our community. Well, how are we going to do it? I don't know. We're just going to go do it, and then we'll figure it out later. And so I very much I have to remind myself of, okay, people want to come with you, and just say, hey, I don't have all the answers, but let's go and try to figure this out. Because if not, we'll talk it to death, because that's my other fear of, God, we know this thing needs to happen, but we're just going to talk and then never do anything. And then I react on the other end of, I'm just going to go and do it, and then we'll figure it out later. So yeah, I totally identify with that.
Well, and my issue is I'm always like, I think I'm clear, but I'm not clear. like, can you see what I'm seeing? Like, and I think in my community, we have there's a Ministerial Alliance group that, for years did this kids got backpack school supplies every year. Well, like 2 weeks before we started raising our funds that we traditionally raise, they said, we're not going to do that this year. So then I was like, all right, well, church, we're going to take up and we're going to make sure that elementary kids get basics back to school supplies. We're going to do 200, and I don't care who's with me. I'm going to make sure it's done. And then I didn't realize, like, I really should say, hey, I want you to come be a part of me and with this as we do this for our community. And it's been fun because we've one of the big things I like doing is partnering and bringing the church to other organizations and saying, hey, we have this facility, you all do something, let's work together so we can, I've got a huge campus that could definitely do a lot of different things. And so just trying to get people to understand in our church to say, hey, you know, they're not going to come to us. We need to go to them. And so
That's right.
as you were talking, you know, I live, you know, the Cherokee Nation was one of the first groups or towns or organizations to sue the pharmaceutical companies for opioid addiction. And, you know, it's huge here. And so the hard part is that we have so many Christian organizations that are doing some kind of addiction ministry, and some of it has been very hurtful, that if we were to start something, that the skepticism would be there of saying, well, you know, so-and-so at church down the street just did that. And, you know, they told us we had to come to Jesus, or we're never going to get better. And, you know, I mean, there's just been so much hurt out there with those. And that's, I think, what you're trying to do, you know, is a great, you know, I think that's something that God has to put on an individual's heart to do. I don't think that that's something like, you know, those churches or those people that might be listening, you know, yeah, it's a great idea, and every community could benefit from something like this, but you really need to find the right people who God has called and said to go and do this, to equip them to go do this, instead of just saying, hey, let's just do this because. I think far too often we do that. And so, like, you know, I was listening to your story, man. Your story is just so powerful, and you know, as you guys continue on that journey, you know, I think God's going to continue to bless you as long as you remain faithful to God. And you know, I think there's going to be a day when you turn around, your backyard, it's going to be just full of people, and you're going to wonder, like, you're going to be screaming your head off because you, like, the overwhelmingness of this is not what we were ready for, but yet God is going to provide for you, and maybe even a space and all this stuff. I mean, I just can see it and sense it. And I pray that you continue to be faithful to God, and may God be with you on your journey. And thank you for your time today.
Yeah. Thanks for that.
So is there anything else that you guys want to kind of let us know, talk about? You know, is there any more in your journey? I can't wait to see. We're going to have you guys back on and break this down again in 6 months and say, here we are, you know, because I like I said, I very shamelessly watched you guys on Facebook do this, and it's amazing. And I love it because it gives me hope that, oh my God, we can do stuff. You know, we can be productive in the church and bring love and grace to people no matter where we are. And it's yet again another example of, it doesn't matter what four walls or what backyard or where you have this stuff. When you go faithfully into these spaces and gather people with God's love and grace, amazing things happen. Lives change. And so, yeah, shamelessly watching you guys. And so, is there anything else you guys want to let us know about your story, about free, about anything? I know that's a loaded question.
I was saying, you just asked a preacher a question that he could talk.
Yeah. Do you have time for this? Actually, it is a theological response for me, and I'll say it really briefly. You know, I'm reminded of that story of Abraham in Genesis, in Genesis chapter 12, Abram at the time, being called to do this new thing, to step onto a new path. And you have these three beautiful words. I think it's verse 3. Don't quote me on it. I think it's verse 3. So Abram went. And I would hate when I look at my life, I want to be able to say that. So Ryan went. So Tami went. When we get called to these new things, that we don't just, no, it's not comfortable, man, that's scary. What if it rains? I mean, that's a really practical question for us every week. We're like, oh my goodness, there's clouds inside. What if it rains? So Ryan went. Like, we don't get bogged down with all those questions and trying to figure it out. That's my tendency. But I've got to be reminded, so we went because we were called to do a new thing. And this is what being faithful for us, in our minds, this is what being faithful looks like. It's not to get trapped in all the negative what ifs, but it's like, okay, God, we sense it, we're going to go. And we know that you're going with us. We know that you're leading us. So thank you for your blessing, Matt. That was a beautiful blessing for us to be reminded of. Thank you for that.
We need that. We forget how often we need to hear those things, but we do. So yeah, we appreciate you guys and your encouragement.
Yeah. And we'd love to come back on and another few months or whatever and see where this thing is, because it would look really different than it. I bet it looks really different than it looks right now.
Right.
And we're excited for that.
Yeah. No, we'd love to have you guys on anytime. I mean, you have an open invitation. Just whenever you want to come on, let us know and we'll have you on. Because I think this is such a powerful story. And for those who are listening, does carry a lot of weight to say, oh, here's who I am. You know, I need to find this place, or I know somebody who needs a place like this. How do I get them in touch? You know, and that's just what we're trying to do, is create that space for people to have these conversations and be truly honest with who they are and where they are in life, with God, with people, with whomever. And, you know, you guys are creating such a beautiful space for that conversation to happen. And I love it. Yeah.
So to kind of bring it to a close, we want to encourage all of our listeners to go on the social medias and all the different ones that we are a part of. And you know, when this episode airs, you know, please feel free to share it with friends, because their story is powerful. And we encourage you to share it with a friend that you may know need to hear this, or hear maybe this might be a special calling or a call in your life, and encourage you to do that and share that and connect with us. You know, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever other ones that we have. We have a website and all that other crazy stuff too. But we thank you, our listeners, for listening. Don't forget to go on our website and, you know, buy some t-shirts and stuff. Great gifts for any holiday or any kind of dad gift that you need. It works really well. Or if you want to buy your mom a Bearded Theologians t-shirt, that would go really well. I'm sure she'd laugh and be weirded out at the same time as well. We thank you, our listeners, for listening. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
We hope you've enjoyed the conversations that we've had today on the Bearded Theologians Beardcast, and we'd encourage you to continue those conversations online at beardedtheologians.com or on our Facebook page. We also hope that you pick up a couple of coffee mugs to satisfy your coffee mug collection. Have a good day.